This is a really exciting moment for me here at AFSC. My name is Amy Gottlieb. I am the Associate Regional Director for the Northeast region of the American Friends Service Committee. I'm based in New York City. And today I have the absolute pleasure and honor of being here with my colleague, mentor, and friend, Bonnie Kerness, as we recognize International Women's History Month, and Bonnie's extraordinary work as an advocate, activist, colleague at the American Friends Service Committee for 50 years, 50. And thanks, I see folks putting in where they're coming from. Please, new people coming on, just let us know where you're calling in from. We're so happy to have you. So we're gonna just dive into our questions. I wanna say that I met Bonnie when I first started at AFSC about a little over 25 years ago now, and was always inspired by her energy and her brilliance and her connection to the communities that she was working with. In the last 7 or 8 years, I've had the pleasure of working with Bonnie a lot more closely. And so I'm here today with all of you to celebrate this incredible work. So Bonnie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I will launch with our first question.
Thank you so much, Amy. It's been an equal pleasure working with you and the Service Committee. My name is Bonnie Kerness, and I've had the privilege of serving as Program Director for the American Friends Service Committee Prison Watch program for many, many years.
Thank you, Bonnie. Talk to us. Tell us what inspired you to first do this work.
Have a little bit of patience with me. When I was 12, it was a Supreme Court decision, the 1954 Supreme Court decision. And I saw on my 10-inch television screen children being hosed and bitten by dogs. And it was the first time that I'd ever witnessed child abuse. When I was 13, Emmett Till, who was 14, was murdered in the South. And something in me froze at that moment. I began volunteering at 14 at the University Settlement Camp, which was very closely tied with a folk singer named Pete Seeger, which many people know. And his music taught me about racism, about unions, about many things about which I knew nothing. I went south as soon as I was able in my early 20s and had the good fortune to be trained in community organizing by the NAACP. And then I worked with Highlander for a year. And that brought me, my family and I moved back north. And the only social change, we moved to New Jersey, and the only social change organization I ever saw mentioned in the newspapers, and I was searching for a place to volunteer, was the American Friends Service Committee. So that's my long story short.
That's incredible, Bonnie. And I have heard parts of that story before, but I never tire of hearing it. Can you share some of your achievements at AFSC, things that you feel most tied to in the work that you've done?
Achievement is a hard word because just like things that we learn don't stay learned, achievements don't stay achieved. I think personally, listening and working on behalf of those who trusted me to become a vessel, imprisoned people, family members, Quakers. I came into the work at a time where I firmly believed that the United States was imprisoning people for political reasons, and we understand that if we know anything about Martin Luther King's journey. And it was my achievement to be able to carry forth their words. And I think that AFSC was really the bottom line of the social change movement that began the work on solitary confinement and conditions of confinement in United States prisons.
Thank you, Bonnie. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like people who trusted you to be a vessel? I love that phrase and just want to hear a little bit more for people who might not know the details of your work.
Well, it can be a mom calling me, at night. It can be any number of the U.S. political prisoners who are still there. Sundiata is 85 years old. AFSC, I'm so proud, has just filed an amicus on his behalf. The imprisoned men and women in this country who have so much to say, who have so much to share, including their art, their poetry, their writings, and the service committee itself has been, the enabling vessel to get so much of this out. In New York, we had the extraordinary experience of the Metropolitan Museum of Art putting on an exhibit called Marking Time, Art in the Age of Incarceration. And I really think AFSC had a lot to do with that exhibit coming into being.
I think you're absolutely right about that. And for folks who haven't seen it, we can try to put a link in the chat later to some information about that exhibit, but you can also look online, Marking Time, at MoMA PS1 in New York City. Bonnie, can you talk really briefly about your recent appointment in New Jersey and what that grew out of?
I think this has to go back to when we were talking about achievements, and we thought we achieved a change in solitary confinement. We worked for 6 years, 8 years on changing that law. And a year ago, January, I got a call from a woman in the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility who said they're killing us, they're beating us. And it turns out 20 officers, 20 guards beat half a dozen women, breaking eye sockets, breaking ribs. And we were on it immediately. And we did not complain to the Department of Corrections. We complained to the media, and we complained to legislators and challenged them, really. You pass a law, and then what? Then who's minding the store to see that the law is carried out? That intervention and the year that we've been working with the department on what happened to the women led to reinstatement, and I think it won't be just the women, led to reinstatement of the boards of trustees for the individual institutions. And I was grateful to be named a member of that board of trustees.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie. I think the media coverage on what was happening in that facility and the change in leadership in New Jersey, the Commissioner of Corrections stepped down because of all of the information that was released in large part to the relationships that you have built with people inside over so many years. Bonnie, is there anything you want to share, maybe a greatest challenge in the work as we think about the times that we're living in and how you keep going over all these years?
Well, I don't know any other way to live. So, but I think some of the challenges are serious challenges. I don't know. I know that we have an extraordinary staff at the service committee. I don't know what kind of experiences they themselves have had with law enforcement, but I know that there were certain periods where I had to teach my children not to open the door for the FBI. I have seen my name as someone to be harmed on private email sites. So I think that there's a certain amount of moxie that goes along with being a program member of AFSC staff. Not everyone loves you, and that's been, I forget the question, but that's been a challenge.
That was exactly right. Some challenge. The other part of the question that I didn't ask yet is about some successes, and I'm going to direct the question just a little bit more and ask you to talk a little bit about your work with young people and the people that have come through the Prison Watch program over so many, many years and what that's meant.
I think ever since we were located in Newark, which started in 1976, we've had students. We've had undergraduate and graduate students working with us, so that the magic of working with students who are in turn working with imprisoned men and women and their family members has been extraordinary. And it's been amazing to see some of them go on to become community organizers in unions, to become social change agents themselves, to become very unique kind of mentors and teachers to people younger than them. So that's been a constant joy in the work.
Yes, and I've heard many of those young people say that their lives have dramatically changed after having met you and having volunteered with the Prison Watch program and having been able to understand a system that is so opaque for so many of us. Can you share, Bonnie, a little bit about, we talk about this at AFSC, we're on a road to abolition, right? I mean, we believe in abolition, and we're on a path to get there, and we know it's a long path. Anything you want to share about sort of where we might be on that road and what we need to do to get there?
I think we need to take a real good look at New Jersey. The public health, one of the things we did at the very beginning of COVID was work in coalition on the Public Health Emergency Act, which has resulted in about 6,000 people being released. And according to newspaper reports, the population is down 31%. So we're on a roll and now need to look very carefully at how we can keep that going. I think also our messaging needs to be very open to the opposition. I can remember speaking at one university, and all classes were released and there were like 400 people in the audience. And I get all through, and one young man stands up and says, I disagree with just about everything that you said. And the subsequent conversation was awesome. And we talked heavily about abolition and what a prison system looks like today, what it does in terms of damage and harm to families and communities, and what an alternative might look like. It was very tiring and very enriching.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie. And those are the conversations that I think in large part, due to so much of the work that you have built over so many years, AFSC is deep in these conversations. Many of our colleagues are having these conversations on a regular basis. Our community safety and beyond policing Shout out to the folks who are doing that. Lots of opportunities for people to really engage in some of these hard dialogues. And I think as our times are getting more and more difficult, news is harsh. To be able to be in the conversations that are hopeful are the ones that keep me going. They inspire me. Um, you talked about what inspired you to start. What inspires you to keep going, Bonnie, now? And do you have thoughts about what others can do? What the folks on this conversation can do, people who might see this recording? How are ways that we can all be involved towards really fundamental systems change?
That was a mouthful.
Sorry, you want me to break it down a little bit? Okay, so what still inspires you now as we're talking about this 50 years into your journey here? There's more to it. It is not ending. I want to be clear with that, with people on that. Yeah, what inspires you now?
Well, I think that's in someone's insides. I made a promise to myself when I was 13 or 14, and I it's important to me that I keep that promise, that I keep that way of life, no matter what else is going on. That's a commitment I made to myself, and I think just people, by virtue of being on this Facebook Live, are already engaged in some form of social change. Prisons are the bottom line of so much of what is wrong with this country, with this world. It's almost as if no matter what level of social change you work on, beginning with kindness, it will have an impact. It will change someone somewhere. Amy, I'm not hearing you.
Sorry. Thank you for that. I said to you earlier that this opportunity to have this conversation with you in front of a lot of people is the highlight of my month. It's a lot of dark times, a lot of hard things that we're seeing in the news every day, but you have brought a light to my day, but also to my life, Bonnie. And I'm just going to be very direct and say that the American Friends Service Committee is so enormously fortunate to have you as part of this family. And I personally am just sending my love and saying thank you for setting such an extraordinary example for so many people who want to engage in social justice and can follow your grace, your thoughtfulness, your kindness, and your brilliance into this work. I just want to, if folks have any questions, I want to open it up. If anybody has anything they'd like to ask Bonnie directly, you can put that in the chat. I'll give it a second. I don't know, Bonnie, if you have any words that you would like to close with.
Just to thank you so much for your words and pushing this forward. I honor my co-workers. I honor the service committee. I honor everything I've learned from my co-workers, including you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. You're getting a lot of love here in the comments, which is really nice. Do want to say, folks, you will be hearing a little more about Bonnie. We'll be sending out some information to really celebrate her 50 years. Kristen has a question for you, Bonnie. Just curious if there is a response to what we can do to carry on your legacy.
I think any work in social change, any work in building social consciousness, any kind of work with young people. I think that it's an Ella Baker Sweet Honey in the Rock song. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. So anything, any form of work that you choose to do that fits your insides is a gift.
Beautiful. Bonnie, there's one more question here. Was there any disappointment for you in your work?
I think I mentioned it because I think it's not the only one. Putting all that work and all those years into stopping the use of solitary confinement, first for political reasons, for the political prisoners, and then as punishment, getting the laws passed, and as other advocates throughout the country are celebrating the passage of these laws, I'm saying, be careful. Who's watching, who's monitoring the laws that legislators pass, because they're not.
Yeah, that's really important. And I will just say, that there are disappointments across the board in this social justice work that we're doing every day.
Mm-hmm.
But to keep at it is, as you were saying, the gift, right? To be able to move forward, recognize that the disappointments are going to happen, but that we have our North Star, we have our vision.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to North Star Vision document for AFSC folks. We have that, right? We know where we're going,
Mm-hmm.
and with faith and love, and as you said, kindness, we'll get there. So, Bonnie, thank you. Thank you all for joining us. It's an honor and a pleasure always. This will be available on the AFSC website and on the AFSC Facebook page shortly, I believe. If anybody would like to connect, please just let us know in the chat and we can follow up.
Amy, thank you.